Hey everybody, what's going on? It's Bobby here, and we're back talking about something a little bit different here at Geek Culture. I mean, normally we talk about consumer electronics, collectibles, camera gear, but Zachy and I are avid motorcyclists. We love our bikes, and we have in our hands with us today the first high-performance electric motorcycle in Singapore from Energica, the Eva EsseEsse 9 or 9 Plus in the flesh. Let's talk about it. All wired up, baby. Wired up, nowhere to go. So before we get into things, I do want to let you know that we're not paid or sponsored for this. We've had the bike for about 2.5 days. It goes back later on this evening. So this is going to be more of a first impressions, and it's going to be more about that transition from a petrol-based motorcycle to an electric motorcycle. What is that like? What are the pros? What are the cons? What are the things you need to know? That's what we're going to cover in this kind of hands-on first impressions video of this. We will talk a little bit about the specs of, course, the Eva EsseEsse 9, because the specs are essential, but we're not going to go too detailed into it because they have a website with all that information. Anyway, let's talk about the design of this first and foremost. They're calling it the classic motorcycle vibe. It does give me a little bit of that Ducati Monster feel to it. It is more of a classic stance, more of a slight upright, a little bit lean forward look to it, but you're going to see the fairings a little bit more sporty, a little bit more futuristic, more modern. Then you go look to the front of it, then you got this classic headlight to it, this round circular headlight, which kind of blends old and new to it. Now, this comes in a variety of colors with the EsseEsse 9. You have a blue tank, a black tank, or a yellow tank. We opted for the black tank here. That's all they currently have available. There is no red option. If you want to go for red, it's the Rebelle or the Ergo, which are beautiful bikes, more sporty in their design, but that's something to take note of. But as we move to the back, you're going to see more in tune with that classic design is this dark brown, I would say leatherette or leather seat on this. So it sort of ties in with the gray and the black, gives it a nice classic look. Some blue accents around the bike as well. That's to sort of give you that electric look to it. And then we see how this chalice frame here, very reminiscent, of course, of the Ducati Monster. But as we see, we got the fairings here that gives it that sport essence to the bike. The mirrors on this are standard. Of course, personally, I would probably opt for something a little bit more lower profile, but they are very visible, very easy to see, angular in design. The levers, of course, all beautifully made. Everything is well made on this. We have Marzocchi front forks on this. We've got a Bitubo rear shock on this on the back of it. We got Pirelli tires, Brembo brakes on the front and back. This is a very high spec'd out machine. So you are pretty much decked out. Now, in terms of power, you can max this out around 86 kilowatts, 80 sustained thereabouts. That's around 112, 109 horsepower. So it's not going to be a blazing fast bike by numbers, but that all changes once you twist the throttle on this. Now, the top speed on this is around 200 kilometers per hour here, and that's plenty for most highways. I mean, is it going to compete with leader bikes? No. It's 0 to 100 in this is around 3 seconds. So I guess it depends how you spec it out. If you get the RS variant, you can go even faster. So this is a very fast bike, and I'll talk about the performance later on in terms of how it drives and the throttle, the response, all that in just a bit. But in terms of the design, the look of it, it's a very beautiful looking bike. As a matter of fact, I put this up on my Instagram stories, and I had a lot of people commenting on this bike, more so than most other bikes I put up on there. I would say my Speedmaster comes in first because it's customized, but this is a very close second. Everything that Energica has done to this is really beautiful. In terms of the display where you see all your information on the bike, it's very eligible, very easy to read. It changes from white in daylight to black at nighttime. So no issues at all with that. Could it be a little bit larger? Perhaps there's a big border around it, but I'm not gonna fault them for that. Maybe that'll come in the near future. To charge this bike, it's all underneath the seat of this. Now you have two chargers, you have a DC and an AC. DC's for fast charging, AC's for the long-term charging. Fast charging will get you to a max of 80% on this motorcycle. And that will pretty much cover you for a good portion of the day or a few days thereabouts, because Energica's touting around 400 plus kilometers of battery usage in this new 21.5 kilowatt battery that they have in this. It's lighter than the 13.4 and it's got more power into it. So it does bring down the weight savings on this bike just a bit. But it also depends on how you ride this motorcycle. There are 4 settings on this motorcycle in terms of how you want to ride: eco, urban, rain, or sport. Then of course you can adjust the regenerative engine braking as well, from eco, which is basically none, to high, which is really intense. So we'll talk a little bit more about that through the riding experience as well. The one thing missing that kind of gives it as you can see, the cojones, the macho-ness of a motorcycle is the exhaust. There is none there. You get used to it. I mean, that's part of the electric experience, but I think the overall design of the bike really is done so well in the front mid part of it that you're not going to miss it too much. But I don't know, maybe in the future with electric motorcycles they'll put some sort of faux exhaust in the back with maybe a speaker in there to give it more of a louder sound. We'll talk about that as well in the riding experience of this, because the sound on this is very unique. Anyway, with that, let's get on the road and let's put this bike through its paces. Put this in reverse. Tell you, reverse is a godsend on this bike. Not that it's that heavy, but it does make a difference, especially when you need to back up, or you're on a hill, or you're on slippery ground. It makes a big difference. 37% charge. Yeah, we're gonna have to charge up later on today for this one. All right, off we go. This is gonna be fun. Fun day. Hopefully the weather holds. If it doesn't, and when we're pretty much screwed. But well, we'll do what we can. I wish I had a clutch, going to do turns and slow maneuvering. Definitely takes some adjustment. All right. This See, this is one of the cool things about this bike actually, is the fact there is no clutch. So, if you're just sitting here waiting at a traffic light or just want to chill, there's no engine heat, there's nothing coming from the tank at all. You feel a slight vibration, and that's just, I guess, the battery, but it's relatively very quiet and very comfortable. Visor's down. Audio is going to change a little bit on that, but here we go. But as you can tell, it's a very quiet bike. I mean, it does have this whining sound. It does sound a little bit like the Dark Knight Tumbler. Obviously smaller, of course, but it has that that sound to it, that kind of that whining sound. Now, I'm not too sure if this is going to be a problem, obviously when you get into heavier traffic situations, because, a lot of countries are trying to reduce the sound from exhaust pipes, but, loud noise does save lives to some extent. Of course, you don't want something obnoxious, but you want something that other drivers can hear you, especially now with everybody with all this, Android Auto and Apple CarPlay and all that stuff, that they're constantly having multimedia in their cars, and they're talking on the phone or listening to Spotify or, Apple Music or whatever, music platform they used to. They're not going to hear a lot of things around them. So this bike is going to be virtually silent for a lot of those drivers. So it's going to be up to us as motorcyclists to be much more aware and to just be mindful on the road. And obviously lane splitting like what that guy is doing right there might not be something you want to do with this bike, especially because, well, example for here in Singapore, drivers do like to change lanes very suddenly because of our roads. and just because of the driving styles here, and that could cause some issues because they can't hear you. Now, of course, there's enough power in this to get out of situations, especially in sports mode, but it is something to take note of, especially on that. But yeah, it's very quiet, very chill. I mean, the nice thing about this here in Singapore, obviously, is that it's a very hot and humid climate. I would say if you're in Fahrenheit, around 85, 90 degrees, thereabouts, year-round, sometimes more rain than others, but the humidity is also very high. So when you're on certain motorcycles, that heat that comes from the engine, where the pipes, depending on where the pipes are located at, it can be very bothersome, especially when you're in urban situations like this. And the nice thing about this Eva EsseEsse Nove is you feel nothing. It feels very, very comfortable. So let's just wind this up a little bit. The one thing about this bike is it's really hard to describe without actually riding it. I'll try my best, but the acceleration is fantastic. There is the power band on this, it just goes straight up. You turn it, it goes. That's a good thing, but also if you are new to riding and you think this is going to be some PMD kind of vehicle that's going to be nice and easy to ride around, I maybe would say think twice. There's a lot of power underneath this. Now, of course, you can adjust it. You have 4 different modes on here. Let's just go through those right now. We have Eco, Urban, Range, Sport, then which you see ABS on or off. Then you have off, low, medium, high. That's for your engine braking, for the regen braking on that. I set it to medium because that seems to be the area that I like the best. I've heard people like second or third. I tried the highest, and it's just too much engine braking for my personal preference. But each their own. This is one thing you can try and test out on this bike. Is the various different modes. So usually I'll go in urban, but I've been trying sport for the last, day and a half, because I only have this bike for 3 days, or 2.5 days thereabout. So it's a little bit, you need to live with this bike a little bit more to understand how it maneuvers and, what settings to really dial in on this. And I think if you become an owner of a bike like this, you're really going to have fun, fine tuning it to your liking. For me personally, urban is a great option. Still have your torque, you still have some power, but it's not like sport where it can just really, twist it out the throttle and it goes, right? You get some power for sure, but it's a little bit more, easier to ride. Now, as you can see here, I'm not even using the braking, I'm just using the engine braking. I basically just turn the throttle off and the engine braking takes over and slows down the bike, which is nice. Now, that's something that I would normally do with a clutch and gears, is I would downshift, and that sort of replaces it to some extent. But I think that's going to be the hardest part for a lot of people out there, is getting used to the fact there is no clutch and there is no gears. And because the way I was taught to ride a motorcycle is to really use the clutch control to really maneuver, slow maneuvers, things like that. Whereas with this bike, you're really reliant on the throttle and on your rear brake and front brake. Now, I probably wouldn't use the front brake that much on this bike because A, it's heavy, and B, it's very strong, where you're going to use the rear brake and, of course, the engine braking a lot more than you might on a normal motorcycle because you don't have a clutch. So something to keep in mind. It's just a learning curve. I'm still not there yet, to be honest with you. It's been, as I said, about a couple days with this bike, about a day and a half, sports mode, but a couple days with it, and it's still a lot to learn and to readjust, so I think for a lot of riders out there who want to go into these electric motorcycles, that's something to take note of, is that there will be that adjustment period. And at first it might be frustrating and you might be like, no, I don't want to do this, forget it, I'll just go back to the standard way of doing it. But, just like when you first got your motorcycle, you got to learn it. You have to spend some time with it. And but just don't hit that front brake, especially on slow maneuvers, because this is a heavy bike. It looks light, but it's not. And that's why there is a reverse and slow moving forward option on this. Now, here's where it gets tricky. U-turns on this bike, and it's going to take some adjustment, because usually I would use clutch control, twist the throttle, clutch control, use my counterbalance and just go around a turn. But because we don't have that clutch control here, you're reliant on the throttle, the brake, and your counterbalance. So you're missing that one thing, for me at least, that makes me, it's a little bit challenging, to be frank with you. U-turns I have not gotten the hang of on this bike yet. It just probably take me a week or so, then I'd be fine with it. But you know what I mean? These are the small things that you're going to realize when you drive this bike. These are the small things you're going to realize when you ride this bike around. Is that yes, there are going to be situations like that where you're going to be like, oh, it doesn't turn as well, or what's going on here. You just get used to it. I mean, also, case in point, when you're on the highway and you want to lean into a turn, this bike is a little bit harder to lean into a turn than, let's say, a standard motorcycle. It's not so flickable. I mean, it looks like it would be, but it's really not. I mean, you really got to put some weight into it. And it's not a deal breaker. It's just something to keep note of. See, I'm just taking my time on the U-turn here. It's almost like a new rider, but you know, it's not my bike. I don't want to drop it. It has to be returned later on, and yeah. So we're going for a little bit of a bike wash right here. Hopefully they say it's okay. All right. And the nice thing is, if I just take my hand off the throttle, it's quiet, and I put the kickstand down, it sort of turns off the bike. I mean, you still see the electronics, but it's pretty much off. Good. Yeah, just take a look, walk around with it right now. It's a really nice looking bike, you know. The Rebelle, and of course, the top of the line range the ergo is gonna look really badass. But this is a bike that's growing on me design wise. I think it's just maybe the mirrors I would change, perhaps the bars. I don't know. I mean, that's just me. It feels like this bike needs red, but that's where the Rebelle and the ergo comes into play, because you can get that red color. But yeah, this is pretty interesting. Anyway, let them wash the bike and get back on the road in just a bit. Yeah, one of the things about riding in Singapore, of course, now we are a little behind other countries when it comes to electric vehicles. I mean, we have more electric cars here on the road. A lot of our taxis are hybrids, but fully electric is still in its infancy here, and we are getting better. But of course, this is the first high-performance electric motorcycle on the roads. I think it's the first electric motorcycle on the roads here, to be honest with you. I mean, we have a local company making one, but I don't know if people are buying them yet or if it's still in pre-production. I'm not too sure. But this one is out. This one is on the roads. Took a few months to get it approved, but it is approved and ready to be bought. Now, here's the interesting thing about buying bikes here in Singapore, which you know, I might talk more about later on this video. But anyway, it's the price point, because we have a lot of extra taxes, especially when it comes to, you know, higher CC bikes and the larger bikes out there. And of course, this is an 80 kilowatt per hour or something like that bike. So this is considered a class 2 here. We have 3 classes of motorcycle licenses you can get, 2B, 2A, and 2. But I think when you get to something like this situation with an electric motorcycle, I don't know how you can have 3 classes, because these things can be dialed in to be whatever you want it to be. Like, case in point, I set this to eco mode. My max speed is 90 kilometers per hour, right? And the torque is really low. So that's going to be great for a novice rider to get used to this. And that's something that a beginner rider would use, versus sport mode, which would be much, for the more seasoned rider. So I'm not too sure how Singapore is going to go about that. I think that those that 3-stage licensing might have to have another relook at it, because of the whole electric situation, and also how you ride a bike. Good stuff. Really, I'm really enjoying the ride on this thing, though. That's the one thing I can say about this, is that it does make riding a motorcycle easier in that regard, especially when you're just doing this kind of traffic. It's very easy, quick pickup, doesn't get out from under you. I mean, you just got to really understand that this throttle is sensitive, and so just a slight turn can make a big difference. Now, this car right here is moving over here. Obviously, probably couldn't hear me, but it's okay. I saw him with the light. So that's something that you're going to notice with this bike, is you're going to be more aware with these things, because there's less to do on a motorcycle. So that could be a positive in that regard. But maybe they'll put some speaker systems on these bikes as they get more matured, and a little bit louder exhaust, or maybe there's a button you can press to just get a louder sound. But I have to say, there's a very good horn system on this bike. Case in point, it's pretty loud, right? So if there is somebody that's getting around you and you're a little bit worried, honk that horn a bit, you're going to be good. Now, in terms of the suspension on the bike, we've got the Mazzocchi front end on it, the Bitubo rear shocks, and I mean, these are high performance parts. But the one thing I'm going to notice is that this needs to be adjusted a little bit. Now, it is a demo bike, and I'm sure the people have played around with the suspension based on their weight and their preference. But for me, it's a little bit jumpy on the road, a little bit more than I'm used to. Now, I know it's a sports suspension and all, it's going to be quite sensitive, but you know, when you're on the highways or, you know, just any bump on the road, you really do feel it. So it's just, I mean, it's nothing to do with the bike. This is just more the setting. But something to take note of with any motorcycle you get is obviously adjust the suspension to your weight, to your liking. Just don't take it off the lot without doing any of that stuff, because it can make or break a riding experience on a motorcycle. So when I'm looking at the power gauge here, I got about 25% left. So I'm going to go get this charged at a Shell station. Now here in Singapore, we can obviously do it through a variety of different locations. Shell is quite near me, and I went there the other day to do it, and it takes about 12 to 15 minutes to get this up to about 80%, and it's quite cost effective. Okay, so now we're going to go to Shell right here, because we can actually charge the bike, fast charging with the bike here. So they have one port. Hopefully there is not a car there. I was just here the other day, and it was the first time I saw an electric motorcycle being charged here, so they were a little bit impressed by seeing this, to say the least. But yeah, we're gonna plug in and get ready. All right, 22% remaining. Turn off, and here we go. So just to kind of walk you through this real quick here, just in case we can't film, I'll use it with the camera on the helmet, just to walk you through how you can actually access the charging ports. It's underneath the seat here, and use the key right here. Normally this would be storage, and you can put a little bit of storage there, but pop that up. Now you have two ports here of your AC, and then you have your DC right here, and this is going to this is where the fast charging is. This is the slow charging. So if you have a charger at home, you'll be using this. But here, for this purpose, we're going to be using the DC for fast charging. So yeah, this is all really done with the app. They call it the CCS here. That's the fast charging one, and then Type 2 is the older one. So, okay, let me get my phone out. Okay, I got $21 on my balance here. We're going to go to charge, scan QR code. That's it. We're going to go CCS Type 2, 50 kilowatts charger on this, so this is fast charging. So we're going to plug this in. And then we start charging on the app. Now I'm just going to verify, go through the process here. You're going to need your smartphone for this, at Shell at least. Preparing to charge, it's going to communicate. So the bike is saying DC fast charge initialization right there. Give it a minute or two. And we're charging. We are charging. Charging has started here, as you can see on my phone. And it's going to say it's about, it's counting down. About 24 minutes on this one. Okay, to about 80% charge. So Zacky's filming me right now. What's up, Zacky?
What's up?
What's up? So, we're going to hang out here, grab a sandwich at Shell, and yeah, wait for this to charge. And as you can tell, what's really cool right here is you can see that this is going to giving you the level of your charge. So it's this pulsating. So we're right here, and this is just showing you that charge right there. Now, this is cool because you can actually customize this graphic by different pulsating modes on it. And that's just for turn on, of course. When you're charging it, it's going to keep it as is, but it's quite interesting in that regard. All right, Zachy, let's put our bags to the side. Let's hang out for a little bit. That's it. As you can see, this is going to be the new charging wait station. Petrol stations might want to get some sort of cafe or some tables to hang out once we can, obviously with, the situation here in Singapore, the pandemic, obviously we can't gather in too many groups, but as time permits, I think that'll make sense because we're going to see a lot more of these charging stations around here, and yeah, it's going to make a big difference. So we got to about 60% on the charge, then all of a sudden there was a charging error. Now I've noticed this happening a couple times, and this is something that we've been seeing around Singapore, and it's nothing to do really with the bike, but the charging stations really aren't ready for bikes yet, I think, from what I understand. So there are some errors with it. So I've gone up to 60%, which will last me the rest of the day. So I have to return the bike, but yeah, this should go to 80%, then naturally shut off, but I'm only going to 60%. I've taken it in and out, not working yet. So I think we're just gonna get back on the road and continue with this review. But growing pains when you're into the electric motorcycle world. So final thoughts on the Eva EsseEsse 9 or Nove Plus. You know, this has been a new experience for me. As I mentioned before, I ride a Triumph Speedmaster, which is a much more classic inspired bike. Of course, it's a 2018 variant, so it's newer in terms of its technology. But to get on a bike like this, it's exhilarating, it's a lot of fun, but there is a learning curve, as I mentioned throughout this video, in terms of, you know, slow moving, turns, how to, you know, basically just use your right side of your body, your throttle, your brakes, and your left side is just there for balance. It's a little bit discombobulating, especially if you're used to using, you know, learning clutch control, riding a motorcycle. But it's a comfortable bike to ride, as I mentioned before. The speed, the pickup is phenomenal. I mean, the power band on this, there is no dead spots, it just goes up. I really like this bike, and could I see myself getting into an electric motorcycle? And the answer is yes, I could. I mean, this is definitely an investment. You know, here in Singapore, this comes in around 70,000 Singapore dollars. And you know, when you look on the website, this is around 22,000 euros. So in Singapore, we have a high increase of taxes on this bike. So here in Singapore, our taxes on motorcycles and just cars in general are very high. And that does make it a bit of a challenge for a lot of people out there to, you know, decide if they want to go electric because of the, you know, high upfront cost, or just stick with a more traditional motorcycle. Because with this price point, you're now competing with the higher-end Harley Davidsons here in Singapore, Ducati Panigales, Street Fighter V4Ss, you know, the Triumph Rocket 3. So you're in that ballpark. You know, obviously, if you're more into sustainable living and eco-friendly and you want an electric motorcycle, that cost might not be a deterrent for you. But having said that, if you have the means, would I invest in it? I would say yes, I would. You're really going to like the ride on this. I mean, Energica is a smaller company, but they are backed with a really good partnership here in Singapore, and they're really going to support you on that. And I know the guys, they're fantastic people, and they are here for the long haul, and they believe in this technology. Yeah, I really like it. I really like this bike. I think we're ready to go. Zachy, what do you think? Yeah! Yeah! Zachy's hot, sweaty. We're sweating our asses off out here right now. Anyway, those are my thoughts on the Energica Eva EsseEsse 9 Plus or EsseEsse 9 Plus. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Is this a bike that you're looking to invest in? Is the price point in Singapore a little bit of a turnoff for you? Or are you willing to take that step into the future and go fully electric? I would love to hear from you guys on this. Anyway, with that, stay safe on the roads. Take care. Follow us on Facebook. Subscribe to us on YouTube. We'll chat to you in the next one. Be safe on the roads, guys.